Good morning. Okay, so today's video is going to be something along the lines of YouTube made me do it. And that is basically because I have been seeing these gorgeous Milky Way tumblers on YouTube. And initially I was going to buy one, but instead I just thought to myself why spend $45 when I can go out and buy all the supplies and spend over $200 and I can just make my own? Because that's exactly what I did. I went ahead and I bought all the supplies and I decided I was going to make one myself. And I bought a little bit more supplies just in case I wanted to make extra, and that's what I will end up doing. This video is just to kind of show you my 3-day little journey of making these making this epoxy tumbler, what it was like, maybe some tips and some advice when working with epoxy and working with glitter and whatever I'm working with to create this tumbler, just so that maybe you can hopefully avoid some of the pitfalls that I fell into while making this tumbler and ease that journey for you. So let me make the mistakes for you and then I can tell you what not to do. But that's it. I think I'm really pretty pleased with this tumbler, considering it is my first one. There are some mistakes, but I plan to make a few more and improve on my mistakes and correct them in my next tumblers that I do make. So if you want to know how I did this or my experience as a first timer, stay tuned. Okay, so before we start anything, the most important thing here is that you need to wear a good respirator mask and wear some gloves and work in a well ventilated area. It's very important. You are working with chemicals, epoxy, resin. It's hard chemicals and it can make you very sick. Okay, here what I'm doing is I am actually using a 220 grit soft coarse sandpaper to sand off the waxy top coat of this tumbler so that when I spray paint it, it adheres very well. Okay, and here I'm just using white flat spray paint. You can use whatever color you want. What I'm doing is I'm actually just mixing some pigments and some alcohol ink and then another gold color pigment with a rose or a pink to I'm mixing it in the epoxy so that I can layer this coat over the tumbler. You can use pigments and alcohol ink, maybe even spray paint. There are several different ways that you can add color to epoxies. And really here what I could have done is I could have made this more pigmented. It didn't come out, it was more sheer and I needed it to be a little more opaque. So you'll see here as I'm laying it down, it's just sheer, which is something I didn't want, but it did still leave like a nice glittery base. So it still looked nice, but it just wasn't the coverage that I wanted. I wanted it to be opaque. What I'm doing is I am using a heat gun to remove the bubbles from the epoxy. There are a few ways to do that. One is using alcohol and another is using a heat gun. I've coated my tumbler with epoxy so that the glitter will stick to the tumbler. So I'm just laying my first little spritz of glitter, and I think this is a rose gold color if I remember correctly. I got these from Amazon, some of this glitter and the pigments also. I'll link them down below. On the bottom there, I am using plastic to catch the excess glitter, but you actually don't, you should use paper because the glitter actually sticks to that plastic there. I learned that the hard way. It was hard to get it off. Okay, and now I am laying down some blue color right next to it just to maybe try to cover any bare spots so that not too much of the white on the inside or on the base is coming through. You can lay this down however you want. You're the artist. You do whatever you want. If you want more white showing through, then you can do that. As it's spinning, I'm trying to pat down the glitter because working with chunky glitter, it can be a little challenging to get it to lay flat so that when you lay down the next coat of epoxy over it, you may have pieces of glitter poking through the epoxy. So as you go, you might want to pat it down and try to get it to lay as flat as you can. I have a little container there where I'm trying to catch the glitter and so I can reuse it. I'm not wasting so much. There are several different sites that sell all different types of glitters. I didn't want to invest that much into glitter until I figured out whether or not I enjoyed making tumblers. I think I do like it, so I think I might go ahead and buy those glitters. Next color is a beautiful color. I got this from Amazon too. I'm not exactly sure of the color. Again, I'll link these glitters down below. I got this from Hobby Lobby, this gold. This is actually a finer, the last two glitters that I laid down here were finer glitters. They're not chunky. So these sit very nicely under the epoxy. You usually don't have any problems with them poking through or anything like that. They lay nice and flat. So I'm just pretty much just trying to line up the colors close to each other. And I go back in a little bit with pink. I did see some spots there that needed to be filled, so that's all I'm doing with that. And then here I go, pat, pat, pat again, try to get some of those glitters to lay flat. This color is my favorite color. What I did here with this one is you can, if you have a couple of glitters and you want to create a different look, you can mix some. So I actually added some of that, I guess, royal lighter blue shade into this black. And it just kind of looks more like a really dark blue, but it's like kind of blue and black mixed together. So I really did love the way this turned out. So if you want to mix glitters and create your own look, you can do that too. I did enjoy doing that. I did that with the pigments, and I did that with the glitters. And here what I'm doing, you see me try to clean those edges up. On the rim of the cup, on the inside, pigment and glitter builds up in there. So I'm using my finger to wipe on the inside. It does get messy there in the rim. So I did actually see after the fact, after I finished this tumbler, of how to get a clean edge. So I'm going to try that tactic and then I will maybe get back with you guys and let you know how that worked out and show you that method of how to get a clean rim. Here you're seeing me mix more glitters. Like I had a bunch of glitters there that were mixed. I like the way it looked. So I just added some more, a different glitter to that, and I'm mixing it up and I'm gonna lay it down. And initially I didn't like the way that looked at first. And then after the cup was, completed, when I started doing the veining process, I ended up actually liking it. See, I stopped there because I, I didn't like the way it looked, but eventually I did like it. So, and then I come with this white color. I felt like this part was a mistake, like I made a mistake, but it actually did turn out really nice. I feel like aside from mixing the epoxy, I feel like this might be, could be a little bit difficult to like totally mess up this on this project, especially with the glitters, like mixing the glitters together. I mean, I guess you can, but there were times where I thought I messed it up and it actually looked really nice. make sure to get that bottom part. I do, one of the things I wish that I added more glitter to the bottom, because that edge actually stayed a little bald, so I needed more glitter, and next time I would keep that in mind. That was one of my mistakes. So here I am patting and trying to get the excess glitter off that rim again. There's two things that I'm doing wrong here. I actually, if you look in that cup, that epoxy is milky white. Now that is a mistake in mixing the epoxy that I made. So there was something that I did wrong, and you can actually see it on the cup here. There's toward the bottom there is a milky film, and actually a lot of it kind of looks milky, but there is a method to mixing this epoxy, and when you don't mix it right, then you get this milky buildup on whatever you're making. The second thing I did wrong is that since I poorly mixed my epoxy and it was too thick and too milky, I could not start my veining process right here. So I actually had to wait for this milky layer to cure, and then add another layer of epoxy, and then start my veining process then. So I'm taking the blue, and immediately I noticed that the mixture is still too thick. I figured out later on how to get it thinner. What I did was I went and I heated it up with you'll hear it come on. I heated it up with the heat gun to try to make it a thinner consistency, so it's not so thick and it can actually run a little bit as you lay it on the cup. And that really was not happening. So, I mean, the veining still came out pretty nice, but it didn't go as I hoped it would. So here I go with the pink now, and again, it's still a thicker consistency that I want, so it's not the lines here, the veining process is not as runny as I want it to be. I'm finishing up with this pink color, and now I'm moving on to the white. What I did to create these colors is I mixed a small amount of epoxy, and then I just added pigments to each one. So I added rose gold, the white, the blue, and I used gold as well, like a real dark gold color. And that's all I did to create the epoxy that I used for the veining. So just some epoxy, and then just add some pigments to it. And it makes these liquids here so that you can use to vein your cup or add designs, whatever kind of designs you want to your tumbler. And I'm using a heat gun here to go ahead and pop those bubbles. And I'm also trying to get it to run. If you use a heat gun, you can get the epoxy to kind of melt a little bit and it'll become runny, but it wasn't working here for some reason. So what I do is I use a popsicle stick to run across these veins, this veining, and I try to remove those hard edges myself. So try to create a runny process with the popsicle stick, and I'm dragging these lines down to the bottom of the cup as well. What I'm doing now is I am applying a decal that I made with my Cricut Maker. This tumbler is for my sister, and the reason I'm putting brown sugar is I remember she was telling me the story about one of her childhood friends, how he used to call her brown sugar, and she was just really happy telling me this story, so I wanted to go ahead and put it on this cup for her. I hope she likes it. Okay, so that was my 3-day process in making an epoxy resin tumbler. So the thing that I didn't show you there is that after I placed the decal, I went ahead and put one final coat of epoxy on there just to seal in that decal. I know that's like so many coats of epoxy, but I think of course that's necessary. I mean, unless you don't want to do that part, which I recommend you do because you don't want that decal to peel off. But my takeaway from working on this project is that the most important thing is mixing that epoxy well and using the right methods to do so. Otherwise, you're just going to have a big mess. So some tips on that, and I still need to practice this myself. But some tips is, one, make sure you're working at the proper temperature or a good temperature, which is 74 to 78 degrees. And also, if you need to heat up your epoxy or warm it up, not heat like really hot, but if you need to warm it up, what you can do is you can make a little water bath for your bottles of epoxy to sit in for a little while until you start to, or before you start to mix them. Another thing is that make sure that you are actually using 50-50 equal parts of A and B, not more or, you know, more or less of one or the other. That will screw up your whole mixture. Also, another thing is when you do mix them, make sure that you are mixing for an adequate amount of time. And the recommended time is about 3 minutes. So make sure that you're mixing for about that time, and do it at kind of a not fast and not too slow either, just at a nice pace. Make sure you're just stirring at a nice pace. My mistake I made was I was trying to hurry the process up and thinking I was mixing it like so well if I did it faster, and I did it really fast, and my mixture just was milky, white, bubbly, and thick. So that's not what you want. And the last thing is, any mixture of epoxy is going to have some bubbles. You don't want too many. But if you lay it down, you can use a heat gun to get rid of those bubbles and get you that clear finish that you're looking for. A heat gun, and I see people use alcohol too. I've not yet to use alcohol, but when I do, I'll let you know how that works out. And that's it. That's all for this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope it helps somebody. And don't forget to like and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. Mwah.